Hi. I'm just sat in the car waiting outside. So I just wanted to do a quick live video on self-sabotage. Something that crops up a lot, something that I think at some stage or other we've all believed ourselves to be doing. And so what does it really mean? Okay, what does it really mean? And then what on earth do we then do about it? So when we're talking about self-sabotage, we're usually referring to some sort of behaviour that we're unhappy with or believe we shouldn't be doing, that's often got consequences attached to it that make us unhappy. And so it's almost like self-sabotage is something that takes us away in a way from our happiness and our default of kind of love and peace. It's often we're talking about something that's taken us away from that. And it can be in many different forms for many different people. It might be to do with, like, I don't know, pushing people away in relationships, drinking alcohol. For some people it's drugs, for some people it's overeating. It means something different for everybody. But as I say, often what we're talking about is some form or other of us taking ourselves away from our default and us not being happy about it and having consequences attached to it. And then what often happens is if we then believe that we are self-sabotaging and we want to change it, we then come up often against this resistance, because what we tend to do then is focus on the behaviour. We then start to go, right, well, I need to stop doing this and I need to do less of this. And if I could only change this external thing or this behaviour, then everything will be okay. But actually there's hundreds of ways in which we can self-sabotage. There's hundreds of ways in which we can behave that take us away from our default. And often people will focus on something they believe to be doing that self-sabotage and focus and change it, and then they can find themselves doing it in another way. If we want to find a way to take ourselves away from our default, we will find it. And whether it be alcohol, whether it be food, whether it be drugs, whether it be relationships, whatever it is, always starts with the same thing. And I know I'm boring when it comes to this, but it always starts with the same thing. The behaviour at the end and the consequences are the last part. Yeah, there's much more before that happens, and it always starts with our thinking. Okay, so it's the key in order for us to stop self-sabotaging. Hi everyone. Is not to focus on the outcome and that we need to change it, and almost like, I don't know, if we feel we self-sabotage by overeating or eating too much shit, like the answer is not to wire your jaw. It's just not sustainable, is it? Yeah. And actually, say for someone it's alcohol, and then they say, right, I'm going I'm going a month without drinking, and it might make a difference. But eventually they'll find something else, until you see for yourself, until you start to realise that it's the thoughts that you have and the patterns that you create in terms of your thinking that are then leading on to feelings, that are then often leading on to behaviours that get us doing things, acting in a way that have consequences attached, and then the cycle continues, because then we'll often beat ourselves up for what's happened or what we've done or the behaviour we've displayed, and so the cycle continues. And the only way to stop the cycle and the habit is to understand how we form the habit in the first place, which is really understanding about how our thoughts create our feelings and then our behaviour is a result of that. But actually by focusing on the behaviour and really trying to understand, evaluate and question the behaviour is kind of looking in the wrong direction. It's kind of like, I don't know, I'm trying to think of an example. Can't think, something will come to me in a minute. But it's focusing really on, it's almost like it's too far gone at that point. The habit is formed, and the only real way to stop a habit is to understand how we form habits in the first place, and then we can form new habits. So again, it is really about being able to see, because academically and on a level people can understand, yeah, I know my thoughts create my feelings, and then sometimes I can then have a behaviour attached to that, and that's what's happening. They can understand it almost like as if you were learning a subject, but it's not about understanding it up here, it's about getting it on a level here, that when you're when you're in a position where you're wanting to do this behavior or do something that you know on some level is going to sabotage you. It's about then knowing from a real internal place about, actually, I do have the choice, I do have the ability to stop this. Because once we see it as a behavior that we believe is outside of us, so it's alcohol or it's drugs or it's the food or it's my relationship or it's my friendships, or if I could stop this behavior, everything will be okay. And it's a trap, because it's not true. It's not true, because actually it all comes from in here, and it's not the external stuff. And the more we focus on it being the external stuff, and the more we talk about the external stuff, the more we're missing the point that it actually comes from within here. So, there's no coincidence, again, that people that have learned about these 3 principles and continue to learn about them for a long period of time, for example, have also lost weight. Well, the reason they lose weight is because they understand how thought works. Not only are they changing whatever it is they want to change, but they're also realizing how absolutely every aspect of their life is experienced through their thinking, and so lots of things start to change. So really, the key here is to really start to explore and understand more about how all of this stuff works, rather than just focusing and fixating on what the issue is. So it's alcohol, or it's drugs, or it's overeating, or it's this, or it's that. Because you can try and change any of that stuff, but ultimately, if you don't understand that it all comes from your thinking in the first place, you'll just swap one thing for another, for another, for another. Yeah? So people say, I need to get out of this relationship, but, it's not good for me. This person makes me anxious. And then they might find themselves in another relationship 6 months down the line thinking that they're making them anxious. It's really about us understanding that absolutely every single thing we experience, minute to minute, hour to hour, is from our thinking. Then what happens is we have feelings attached to that. Then those feelings, often we will react to those feelings to either get away from them, to stop them, to block them, to do something. And that's where we can then have a behavior and form a pattern that then we see as self-sabotage. Because, for example, so if I use alcohol as an example, oh, well, I feel stressed, and the habit is straight away to your mind, you go, well, I know if I have some wine, then I'll feel a bit better temporarily, but then we all know that the next day we feel shit again. So it's this cycle, and then you beat yourself up, why did I do it? I know it's not helpful. But hiding alcohol from the house, or saying that you're not going to go out for a month, or any of that, is not going to rectify the problem. It's getting to the point of here as to why we feel the need to do something in the first place. And I would urge any of you to explore this. I know I go on about all the time in the 3 principles, but honestly, to me, it's the only way. I'm a trained, qualified psychotherapist, trained for many years. To me, nothing works like these 3 principles, because once you really get this stuff in your head, once you really understand how your thought is creating all of that experience and those feelings, and then your behavior as a result, and you start looking in the right direction rather than focusing on what you see is wrong and what you think you failed at, you will start to feel so much better in absolutely every area of your life, because it all works in the same way. Okay, so I just wanted to share that, and I hope you're all well, and I'll catch up with you soon.